You're watching Betsafe. We're talking Formula One. It's me, Pete Colley, and Johnny Herbert. We're going to be talking about the Russian Grand Prix. But before we do, let's talk about Bahrain. What did you make of the race compared to what we spoke about just a few days ago? Did we get it right?
I think we were pretty much there. I think we saw that Ferrari do what we've seen the Ferrari do in Australia. I think, as we discussed, looks after the tyres. But there was one smart man out on the track, actually, and I think it was a very close call with him. With the penalty that he had in the pit lane was Lewis Hamilton. If you look at those first 5 laps, and there was sort of a gap sort of developing, but that seemed to be where he was looking after the tyre. So you could actually see he was thinking about what Sebastian has probably been doing and was able to apply that and actually have a good race just by he had that 5-second penalty. But overall, Ferrari looked good, but the pace is still there, equally so. But the surprise obviously was qualifying, wasn't it? With Valtteri Bottas getting that pole position. Expected in some regard, but I suppose you always expect Lewis Hamilton to be the man who actually does it. But overall, it's great. We've got a great mix-up with those top 3. Now they're all talking about what? Championship. Team orders. Already speaking about that. We've only had 3 races. Unbelievable.
What about the way that Vettel went about the race? Was it similar to Australia? Did Mercedes learn anything from Australia with the tactics and the strategy with the way they went with Lewis?
I think with Mercedes, no, it didn't seem to be really the case where probably they didn't have the pace in the race that was needed, except, as I said, where Lewis was able to look after the tyre and was only 5 seconds off of Sebastian at the end of the race, which was the 5 seconds he lost in the penalty he had in the pit lane. So we can see they're pretty much even Stevens, shall we say, but you've still got the advantage, I think, with Ferrari, because I would guess Sebastian wasn't pushing as hard as he needed to because he didn't have a threat from the guys behind. We saw Bottas struggle with his tyres very early on and sort of drop out of contention. But you've still got a cracking little race with the championship with Lewis Hamilton and Sebastian Vettel, because that's going to be all very, very nip and tuck as the championship sort of gets more intense.
For Vettel, it was a 44th, I believe, F1 win.
Yeah.
Are we seeing the Vettel of old?
Yeah, I think we are. I think that there's a lot of people who were very, very critical of Sebastian when he was at Red Bull. He should have won. He only won because the car was the best car on the track, which I think every single world champion I'm aware of had the best car on the track. So, yeah, I think we're just seeing that Sebastian that is happy in the situation that he's got, of course, with Ferrari doing a good job. We saw the frustration of Sebastian Vettel last year, especially in Mexico, I remember, and the expletives that he was coming down the radio, but that was a frustrated man in the car. Now we've got a very happy man in the car, but he's delivering the goods on track. So this is great for us, because of course that's what we want to see. We want to see 2 top drivers in different cars battling it out for race wins and a championship at the end of the year. With
Lewis Hamilton obviously being outpoled by Bottas, and then with the penalty, I mean, I'm surprised to hear you say that you thought he was boxing clever. I was wondering what he was doing.
Yeah, well, as I said, that was just those first 5 laps I noticed that he wasn't hanging on the back of Valtteri especially, and I thought that was where he was just wanting to see them. I think there was only about 150 metres, let's say, difference, but he was able to just constantly keep that there. Then when the fuel comes out of the car, it goes lighter. When it goes lighter, it's easier on the tyre, and that is what he seemed to be able to do. I think we've got the similar situation with Sebastian as well. I think he's very good and aware. Heavy car, the tyres are quite fragile, so you've got to look after them, and you have to look after them early, because if you don't look after them early, you're going to have problems later on in that particular stint. And I think that's what we saw from Lewis. So it was great to see that. But that raw pace that Ferrari is able to do with Sebastian seems to be just that little bit more. They seem to have that little edge, which allows them just to sort of control the race, as we saw in Australia, and I think as we saw in the last race as well.
What happened with Bottas then, from going from pole? I think finished 3rd.
Yeah.
Is that, I'm not saying disaster for him, but I mean, you'd hope for better, wouldn't you?
You would. It's one of those things. It's very unfair. It's the first time he's sort of been in that position. It's the first time he's had to control the leading of the race. It's the first time he's really had to have that pressure that's on his shoulders and put all that energy into the car itself to look after the tyres. We keep talking about tyres, but that's been, as long as I've been involved with Formula One, it always has been a very important part of it. and that comes through experience. So it's, it's only the second time, really third time that he's had a proper feel of what he needs to do to get the best out of himself, but the best out of the car. And as I said, he's got a man next to him with his 3 World Championships who was having to look after the tyres earlier on, and that was the differential between the two, which I think is going to be something he's going to learn from. They're testing still in Bahrain at the moment, and I know he was doing some sort of long runs to try and understand what he needs to do. So hopefully he's going to learn from that. He's going to see what his teammate has done, and then actually he's going to be able to probably apply it in the race if he's in that same situation again. So yeah, you can be critical and say, maybe he should have sort of won the race. But also you've got to say, well, he's got to understand exactly what that car is able to do. And historically, the Mercedes has been a little bit more tougher on its tyres. He comes from Williams that was always easy on its tyres. So that's what I mean. That's where the dynamic slightly twists and you have to learn. But of course you've got to learn very, very quickly. And he's got to be able to put away in a little box what happened in Bahrain, but come out afresh, stronger, and apply it when he gets to Russia.
From the first race from Australia, we're looking at the odds and we're going, oh, Kimi Räikkönen, well, that looks good odds, doesn't it?
Yeah.
They always say the bookies never get it wrong. They really do. What's happened to him? I mean, he did. There was no real show, was there?
No sort of pace was there at all, and it's been sort of a theme since Australia. Understeer. It's all we hear about on the radio is understeer. And I know what it's like when you get that, because obviously when you get understeer, it's pushing at the front. That's very hard on the tyre, but because it's pushing on the front, when you go to the mid corner of a particular turn, it's always then going to lean and swap ends and then lean onto the back end, and then you're going to get more problems. But the understeer is a fundamental issue. I remember when I was racing, I hated understeer because it's something you can't drive around. You can drive around oversteer, but you can't drive around understeer. And Kimi seems to be stuck in this situation where he's got understeer. You don't hear a dicky bird from his teammate. He's a happy boy with the balance that he's got. So it's just the way that the development has sort of happened from last season to this season, from a car that was probably suiting Kimi more than Sebastian last year. It swapped around, and that's why Sebastian now is the man who's doing the job done in a car now that can legitimately win races and possibly a championship down the line. So Kimi, he's really struggling at the moment, and what's going to start coming his way, and it's already started to sort of come out in the press already. He's got to up his game. If he doesn't up his game, Ferrari might sort of push him out. So he's got to deal with that at the same time. But that's the pressures that you have in Formula One and being a sportsman, and hopefully it's something he can drive around it.
That either works one way or another, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You either thrive on that pressure or you fall under it.
And the problem is, if the car's okay and you're getting that pressure on you, there's a chance that you can sort of bounce back. But if you haven't got the car that you want underneath you, but you're bombarded with all this pressure, you can't respond because you can't do it because of the car. That understeer I'm talking about, as I said, you can't drive around it. If you can't drive around it, you're stuck in the same rut, but you're still getting the bombardment of pressure from the teams and from the media at the same time. So that is going to continue, and the only way he's going to be able to sort it out is with his engineer, with his team of mechanics, and of course with the development of that Ferrari, because he's got to get rid of the understeer. If he doesn't get rid of the understeer, he's going to suffer once again.
If he wasn't showing up, what about the drive by Massa for Williams?
Great, isn't it? A guy who was sort of retired from the end of last season, was asked to come back, was happy to come back, and wow, what a car he's got underneath him. And he's just so consistent at the moment, it's unbelievable. And Williams are doing a great job giving him what he needs. And we're going to a track that actually historically Williams have been very good at as well. And Felipe Massa at the moment, I think there's a good chance that we're going to sort of see probably the strongest Williams-Massa combination, maybe coming up in Russia.
Look at the standings then. Vettel on 68 points, Hamilton on 61.
Yeah.
He won't like looking at that, will he? I'm guessing. Bottas 38 and Räikkönen 34.
That's the big thing, isn't it? The Räikkönen on 34. That's going to be something that's going to be very hard to sort of claw back. But it's great at the front because we sort of got that sort of shifting of points. We went into Bahrain equal, come away now with that slight differential. But I think there's a slight twist that's probably going to come in Russia. Although the Ferrari in the past wasn't bad, he got taken out with Kvyat last year, did Sebastian Vettel, so we didn't really see him in the race at all. About 500 yards, I think he did, something like that. But we saw how dominant the Mercedes was last year. Nico Rosberg obviously won the race simply, but his teammate had a problem, same problem that he had in China with his turbo system, and I think he qualified 10th in that qualifying session. But of course, then the race was a bit of a tough one for him. Finished second, which was great, but it shows that Lewis does a good job when he gets to Russia at the same time. So the gap that we've got with Ferrari and Mercedes, and especially Lewis and Sebastian, is not going to be probably a big issue for Lewis, other than him looking at it and saying, I want to be ahead, which he's already said, I only breathe to win. And that's great, because that just shows the hunger that he has got. But he's up against a guy, Sebastian Vettel, who's got exactly the same hunger to do it for Ferrari as well, which is a very important part of this little journey that he's been on since leaving Red Bull. So it's a great dynamic, because we've got two hungry drivers fighting for the race win.
Well, world tensions allowing, we will have a Grand Prix
I think we
in
will.
Sochi.
I think we will. Yes, I think so.
It'll be the fourth one, and Mercedes have won all three
Yep.
so far, haven't they? So is it going to go straight back? Will we be sitting here talking before the next race and saying, oh, it's all square again? Do you think that's the way it's going to go?
We're not going to see that domination that they sort of enjoyed over the last couple of seasons. That's completely vanished. Arguably, it's gone Ferrari's way, but I think what Lewis showed in China, that isn't the case. It's going to be sort of to-ing and throwing as the season goes on. But we're going to a track that's not very easy to overtake. That's one thing. So qualifying is going to be very, very key to get on that front row for sure for those two guys, which I think we probably expect them to do. The track itself, remember I was saying about the long sort of turns that we have in Australia and we have in Bahrain, work very well for Ferrari, as I said. This is not the same. These are like 90-degree sort of corners. They're not tight 90 degrees, they're longest 90 degrees, but they're 90 degrees all the same. That's completely different. So that's where the Mercedes just may be on a little bit more of an even keel compared to what we saw in Bahrain and especially in Australia. And maybe we're going to get that slight similarity of what we saw maybe in China sort of come our way. So the circuit characteristics are probably going to make it that much closer than we've seen before. They're quite simplistic, these 90-degree corners I'm talking about, and because they're simplistic, it's very then hard to get a bit of a sort of an advantage over your either your teammate or obviously your fellow competitor. So that's going to be great to see how that sort of pans out. The last sector in Russia is really the tough one, and that's where the tyre's got to be still alive, especially when it comes down to qualifying. And if it is still alive, you can actually gain that little extra to give yourself that little bit of advantage. But the rest of the track is going to be very, very similar.
Is there a circuit that comes along that drivers don't like? That, do you think, they've added this one and I don't really like it? There's something that can plague you and play on your mind. And
there is. I think a driver always likes fast corners. Always likes a massive challenge. Always likes sort of the G-force sort of feeling on his body and being able to brake very, very hard. So you've got bits of that in China. There's sort of a back straight. It's a little bit difficult, sort of curves as you brake, and that is quite a tricky one. So I think the drivers sort of like that. They do like, I know, that last sector, and that last sector, as I said, is quite challenging. It's technically very, very hard. So the technical side of it is what a driver's going to get all excited about. But as I said, sort of sector 1 and sector 2, they're sort of simple corners, as I said before, but you've still got to get them right. You've still got to get the challenge. It's quite a wide track in those areas. You've always got to sort of keep yourself out of trouble, as in not get yourself into traffic in a qualifying lap, for example, because you're still going to lose time anyway. So there is still that challenge that is there, but you know in your head, I've got to get that last sector right. So that's the thing, you build up almost to that last sector. So there's the enjoyment from the driver's perspective, and I think Russia delivers that.
Weather and tyres, how important will the weather be? Because I'm guessing again it's going to be similar to China. That was cold, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I'm thinking it will be again, or
Could be. It's normally quite chilly in the morning. Again, if the sun comes out, then there's always a chance that it can warm up. But particularly the time of year, it's not going to be a hot Russia. And the tyres have been quite sort of, I don't know, critical in many respects. Although we were discussing earlier on about the Mercedes a bit harder on its tyres, actually Nico Rosberg, although he had an easy race last year, didn't have any problems at all. And I think it was 2 years ago he actually did the whole race without basically doing a stop when he had a problem on the first lap. So it just shows that the tyres then were actually okay, but I think they're going to be a little bit more just on that edge at this year's race, just because I think of the way the selections that we have there. So that's going to make it interesting, because you're still going to have that dynamic of who is going to be able to sort of look after the tyres the best, but of course be the fastest at the same time.
looking at the odds then that are available. Hamilton 13 to 10, Vettel 8 to 5, Bottas 9 to 1, Verstappen and Räikkönen 16s.
Oh, right, okay.
And we were saying that was, well, that's tempting, but now,
No, I
now
know.
you think they got it right.
Well, the tempting one is obviously Bottas.
Yeah.
And Bottas has been very good in the last 2 years. I think he was fighting, I can't know if it was the podium or he was fighting for fourth with Kimi Räikkönen, and they crashed on the last lap. I think that was 2 years ago. And then last year qualified third. Okay, Lewis wasn't sort of been able to perform in qualifying itself, but he finished fourth in the race. So it looks as if Valtteri goes well at that track. So now he's in Mercedes. Now he's hopefully learnt from his experiences he's had in Bahrain. He could actually be sort of, you know, that, I don't know, threat that Lewis and the Mercedes team are not wanting, where there's all this talk about, well, now they've got to focus on Lewis because it's hit between him and Sebastian for the championship. And I think that's a bit unfair, personally. We're 3 races down the line. We're going into our 4th race. That 4th race is a track, as I said, that Valtteri goes very well at. It could then elevate him straight back into the championship fight itself. So this is where he's got to get the job done. If he gets the job done, he then pushes that pressure back onto Mercedes to say, I'm back. So that dynamic is quite there. So actually his odds are pretty okay, I think.
Brilliant. Johnny, thank you as always. We're off now to get our Cossack hats ready for Sunday. You can go to betsafe.com to check out all the latest odds from practice, from qualifying and race day. And remember, you've got to be in it to win it.
Hey!